Hello everybody, this is Grubby Phil and welcome to Thoughtful Sci-Fi. Today we are talking about Star Trek Discovery, Episode 5. Okay, so Star Trek Discovery, Episode 5. It follows on from Episode 3 and 4, of course. It was a good episode. I think Episode 4 was stronger. It's probably been the strongest overall. So in this episode, Stamets and Burnham search for an alternative to using the tardigrade creature because it's clearly being hurt. And Saru takes over command of the Discovery because Captain Lorca has been imprisoned by the Klingons, along with another Starfleet officer, and Hardcourt Fenton Mudd, a character returning from the original series, or rather pre-turning from the original series. The Captain Lorca stuff, let's start there. I think that was the strongest part of this episode. You have him being captured on a transport after having a meeting with admirals. A good meeting with admirals. We see he has some rapport with one of the admirals and also how much power he seems to have. The admirals are also worried about the effect of the jump drive, the spore drive on the creature. On the transport back, he is kidnapped, he is captured, along with the one pilot, by the Klingons. I'm happy the Lorca portion was a strong part of this episode because although it was centering on Lorca and Harry Mudd very good in this, by the way, the Ran Wilson, I think his name is, from The American Office and the great movie Super, he was very good. It's because the Klingon stuff, I think, has been the weakest part of this series so far. And although the focus wasn't on the Klingons, it takes place in the Klingon ship. We have the Klingons torturing people. We learn a little bit more about their culture. And we learn a lot about Captain Lorca. We learn that he killed his last crew. He blew up the ship in order to stop them being tortured and publicly executed and, made examples of by the Klingons. It's not what Captain Picard would have done. But there's certainly an argument for it if they were going to die anyway. Then maybe he did the right thing. We're learning a lot about Captain Lorca. He leaves Harry Mudd to rot in the Klingon prison because he had double-crossed them. Again, you can't really say it wasn't fair of him to do. It certainly wouldn't have been what Picard would have done. Kirk maybe. Good day, bad day, you never know. He may have done it. But it was certainly interesting. We're not used to seeing Starfleet captains like that. But I continue to really like Captain Lorca. Or maybe not like him, but be very engaged with his character. The sort of Burnham Discovery side of this episode isn't quite so good. We start with a very literal bonk bonk on the head bit of her dreaming that she is the monster, the creature that's being used for the spore drive. It's like, yeah, we get there's a parallel there. Maybe didn't have to be spout out quite so explicitly. We get a bit of development from Stamets, which is good because he's been a little bit one note. We get a little bit about his relationship with the Doctor at the end, and that's a really nice scene actually. That works really well. We get some more from Tilly, who has her annoying side but also has her really endearing and really clever side. We get the first two F-bombs in Star Trek. I don't have a problem with Star Trek using swear words specifically. It can be a family show, but I want it to have adult themes. I want it to explore adult issues, and adults swear. I know I do. I just feel like it felt like they sat there and they thought, we've decided we're going to swear in Discovery. We're going to have someone say the F word. Where could we put it? And they just kind of shoehorned it into this scene. It's okay. It's fine. It's a tad jarring because it's the F word in Star Trek, but I found it more jarring just because of where, in a program that doesn't swear much, if at all, where it was used was a little like, oh, okay. It wasn't that worthy of the swearing, but okay. Also, in the scene where they dropped the F word, it's a scene where three of them are discussing what they do as if they're explaining it to someone else. Obviously us, even though we already know. It's a bit of a recap. It's very telegraphy. It's like, if you weren't paying enough attention, we do this, by this, this, and this. But they're talking to three people who have deep knowledge about the subject, and it just seems a little forced. Anyway, the scene, and then you have the F word, and you'll be like, okay. But what it does show is it shows Stamets sort of cracking a smile and being nice to Tilly, and that's nice to see. That's really good to see. Anyway, they sort of find an alternative, spoilers, to the tardigrade, and it takes its toll on Lieutenant Stamets, but we get that there's a way out. So a lot of people were thinking, oh, maybe the reason we never see the spore drive again in future Star Trek is because you have to hurt this innocent creature in order to do it, and that sort of made sense. Turns out now that might not be the case. There might be an alternative. It might not be a viable alternative. We're yet to find out. But it's interesting to explore. I'm glad the Spore Drive will last a bit longer. You know, without getting too hung up on canon, the whole thing is about them creating the new way to fly. And I want to see more of that. I don't want it to just disappear after the first couple of episodes. So, you know, I'm glad to see it stay. We see development between Burnham and Saru. He admits at the end, basically, that he's not so much afraid of her as angry at her for everything she took from him by Captain Georgiou dying and him not being able to become her first in command. It's quite an emotional scene. They don't become firm friends again, I wouldn't say, but they start to build those bridges, and that's nice because, to be honest, throughout the episode, I was sort of thinking that Saru was getting a bit boring. Saru in the pilots, I had so much high hopes for. I was like, this guy's going to be one of my absolute favorites. And the last couple of episodes, he's just kind of been there and been grumpy. But now we get a bit of why. Just that last sort of little bit, the last little chunk of the episode, we got some development in their relationship, and I was really happy to see that. Burnham is making more of an impact with the crew. Stamets is coming to like her, realizing that although she is aggressive at times and made potentially a big mistake that may or may not have caused this war, or at least have contributed to the causing of the war, realizing that they actually have quite a lot in common. You know, Burnham is actually a scientist, and so is he, and they can work together. So that's really nice to see. My main problem in this episode, and it's not just this episode, I mentioned it in my last episode reviews, but I kind of feel like I have to bring it up again, is the lack of development or even introduction to a lot of the other characters. And I'm starting to feel like we're 5 episodes in now, out of only 15, I think it is. And, you know, there are 3 or 4 other people on the bridge whose faces we see a fair amount. There's the sort of Helm and Con person and the robot person, and I think there might be one other person who we see a fair amount around. I think we learn a couple of their names in this one, but, you know, basically they say yes captain, no captain, 3 bags full captain, and they're basically off the screen. You know, Next Gen days, you might have got a little bit of chatter between the two of them, a little funny comment that Data and Geordi used to make to each other as we're getting to know them. So, although we're gradually getting to know our main characters more, especially Lorca in this episode, you know, can't stress enough how much I like that, I need to meet some more of the crew. This feels like it's a ship of about 10 people currently, and I severely doubt that. You know, I know it's on a top secret mission, it probably doesn't have a huge crew, but I need to meet some more people, you know. All the Star Trek series suffer in some ways because they're meant to be these crews of hundreds or even over 1,000 in Next Gen's case, and they obviously don't have the budget to show that number of people. And, you know, you don't want that many characters, you'll never hang on to them. But we do need to meet a bit more of the crew. We've met so few of them, really properly met, and they're going so much into the story and what's going on, which is great, but we need to have a little bit of background character development. We're developing the principals. They seem to be coming along reasonably well, certainly Burnham and Lorca. Let's get a little more from some other people in the crew. Let's meet the crew of the Discovery, which I think is a little overdue now. So all in all, positive. I liked episode 5. I'm still really liking this series. It's very different Star Trek, but every Star Trek series has been different. You know, original series to Next Generation, massive difference. You just didn't have the internet in those days, and people like me either moaning or saying it's good. So, you know, Discovery isn't the greatest thing ever, but I really like Discovery. I've talked to a couple of non-Trek fans, people who basically have little to no experience with Star Trek, and they're really enjoying it. So that has to be a positive, because at the end of the day, if it's just hardcore Trekkies like myself watching it and saying, yes, that's what we want, that's great, it's probably not going to be viable, which is a shame, but it's the way it is. So Discovery, going well. Episode 5, I'm enjoying it still. I'm invested. I've ordered myself one of the little comm badges. Well, they're not comm badges, but the pins, because I think they're a really good pin, and I'll show that to you when it arrives. This has been Grubby Phil on Thoughtful Sci-Fi. Thanks very much. Goodbye.